The political world thought it had seen scandals before, but nothing prepared anyone for the bombshell that detonated inside TPUSA when a hidden whistleblower came forward and leaked the secret everyone swore would never reach Charlie's ears. It wasn't financial corruption. It wasn't mismanagement. It wasn't internal drama. It was an affair. A calculated, concealed, internally protected affair between Mikey McCoy and a male TPUSA member. And the most shocking part? Every major figure around Mikey knew. They didn't just know, they helped bury it. The whistleblower didn't whisper. They didn't hint. They didn't drop vague accusations. They released receipts, audio clips, late-night texts, screenshots of panicked strategy chats, and internal memos revealing that higher-ups were scrambling behind the scenes long before the public ever sensed something was wrong. According to the insider, Mikey's affair wasn't just a secret, it was a liability that threatened the entire organization. If Charlie ever found out, the hierarchy inside TPUSA would collapse. So they did what powerful people do when they're desperate. They lied. They coordinated narratives. They hid evidence. They silenced staff. They created a bubble around Charlie so he never saw the truth. The whistleblower said it clearly. Mikey thought he could control everyone. And the people around him let it happen because they were controlling Charlie. Screenshots showed late-night damage control chats titled "Containment Plan." Voicemails revealed executives whispering, "Make sure Charlie doesn't hear about this." One message simply said, "If this leaks, we all go down." And suddenly, the scandal wasn't just about Mikey's secret relationship. It was about the network of people who protected him. The people who misled Charlie, the people who crafted lies in his name, the people who manipulated the truth to keep one man's secret from destroying their internal power. Now the question isn't, did Mikey cheat? It's, why were so many people willing to lie to Charlie to protect him? And what else have they been hiding? Long before the whistleblower leaked the affair, before screenshots started circulating, and before executives began panicking behind closed doors, there were signs, small, almost invisible signs, that something was deeply wrong inside TPUSA's inner circle. People sensed a shift. Staff whispered about tension they couldn't quite explain. Charlie began acting differently, more isolated, more confused about decisions he never remembered approving, more distant from people he normally trusted, but no one understood why. Until now. Because the truth is this, the affair was not the beginning of the chaos. It was the result of the chaos. The symptom of a system that had already begun rotting from the inside. It started months earlier, when Mikey McCoy suddenly rose through the organization with a speed that made no sense. He wasn't the most experienced. He wasn't the most disciplined. He wasn't the most strategic. But he had one thing that others underestimated. He was charming. He was clever. And he was dangerous in ways no one realized until it was far too late. People around him began noticing strange patterns. He always knew information he shouldn't have access to. He always got ahead of conversations before they even happened. He inserted himself into meetings he wasn't invited to and walked out with more influence than when he walked in. Some called him gifted. Some called him lucky. But those closest to the truth knew exactly what he was doing. Mikey was building a network quietly, strategically, methodically. And sitting at the center of that network was the man he was secretly seeing. The affair didn't begin as a romance. It began as an alliance, an exchange of trust, secrecy, leverage, and ambition. The male member, whose name insiders are still terrified to speak, had access to corners of TPUSA that Mikey couldn't reach alone. He had influence over messaging, over staffing, over donor relations. He knew what information flowed in and out of Charlie's office, and more importantly, he knew how to reroute it. That alone made him valuable to Mikey. The personal relationship came later. The cover-up came after that. The collapse came last. But long before any of this leaked, staff members noticed a disturbing shift in how internal communication worked. Emails went missing. Meeting summaries were altered. Directives that came from Charlie didn't sound like him at all. Certain voices suddenly became louder, while others, people Charlie once trusted, were pushed to the outskirts. Behind all of this was a strategy chat only a handful of people were part of. A private group the whistleblower later exposed. The chat wasn't labeled with anything suspicious. It had a bland corporate name like coordination team. But inside, the messages revealed an entirely different operation. Members discussed how to frame decisions before presenting them to Charlie. They coordinated which information reached him and which didn't. They referred to him as the asset instead of the leader. And worst of all, they talked about how to keep the affair hidden. One message said, "Make sure he's never alone with the wrong person. If he hears this from outside, we're finished." Another said, "Control the narrative. Control the fallout. Control the access. Control, control, control." It became the unofficial motto of the inner circle. But why were they so desperate? Why were they willing to risk everything? Careers, reputations, the organization's credibility to protect one man's private relationship? Because Mikey wasn't just having an affair, he was using it. The male member wasn't just a partner, he was leverage. And leverage inside a political organization is more powerful than money. One insider later revealed that Mikey used the relationship to build a shadow influence structure inside TPUSA, a quiet pipeline of whispered information, manipulated decisions, and loyalty swaps. People who once answered to Charlie now answered to Mikey. And Charlie had no idea. Every time he questioned a sudden decision, someone reassured him. Every time he noticed inconsistencies, someone redirected the conversation. Every time he sensed something was wrong, someone dismissed it as stress. Charlie trusted these people. He believed them. They smiled to his face. They shook his hand. They told him he was in control. And all the while, the truth was being buried just beneath his feet. But the foundation cracked the moment two staffers, who had kept quiet for months, noticed an interaction between Mikey and the male member that was too intimate to explain away. First, a long look. Then, a quiet argument. Then a night where they both left an event through a back exit at the exact same moment, each pretending they weren't leaving with the other. One staffer told the whistleblower, "I thought I was imagining it. I didn't want to believe what I saw. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it." But the moment that confirmed everything came late one night in the TPUSA office. A cleaning staff member, someone with no political alliances, someone who didn't know anything about internal drama, walked into Mikey's office to find him and the male member together. Not talking, not strategizing. Together. The staff member backed out immediately, but the damage was done. The rumor reached the wrong ears. And suddenly, the cover-up machine activated. Executives started scheduling emergency meetings. People were told to stay in their lanes. One director warned, "If anyone mentions this again, their career is over." They weren't protecting Mikey's emotional life. They were protecting their own reputations. If the affair became public, the organization's credibility would collapse. If Charlie found out, the entire leadership structure he trusted would be exposed as a lie. So instead of confronting the truth, they buried it. They rewrote timelines. They manipulated reports. They blocked certain staff from talking to Charlie. They created layers of separation, so he remained perfectly, tragically uninformed. One whistleblower message said, "Mikey isn't the only problem. The problem is that everyone worked together to lie to Charlie." And that is the heart of this story. Not just the affair, not just the scandal, not just the secrecy. It's the betrayal. Because while Charlie believed he was surrounded by loyal allies, his inner circle was actively hiding the truth, building its own power structure, and letting him walk blindly through a maze designed to deceive him, all while Mikey deepened a relationship that became the center of a political cover-up. And when the whistleblower finally stepped forward, they added one final chilling line. This wasn't a scandal, it was a coordinated operation, and the affair is only the beginning. The breakdown began quietly, almost invisibly like a pressure valve, slowly cracking under heat no one realized was building. For months, Mikey McCoy operated with impunity inside TPUSA. His influence grew unchecked. His access became unrestricted. His voice replaced the voices of people far more experienced, far more committed, far more loyal to Charlie. But the real fracture started when a single message, just one, slipped through the cracks. A staffer accidentally forwarded an internal thread to a junior employee. The thread wasn't explicit, but it hinted at something forbidden, something dangerous, something involving containment, narrative control, and internal risk factors. It was the thread labeled Priority Cover, MM. M. Mikey McCoy. 2 hours later, the junior employee was mysteriously reassigned to a different department. A department with no access to communications, no access to leadership, and no access to Charlie. But they didn't delete the message. They didn't forget what they saw. And months later, they became the first whistleblower. The unraveling accelerated when another staffer, someone close to fundraising operations, noticed inconsistencies in financial reports. Not missing money, not mismanagement, but something stranger. 2 travel expenses logged under anonymous internal codes, both tied to Mikey, both matching dates when he was supposedly meeting donors, both in cities where no donors existed. The only consistent piece? The male member involved in the affair was present in both cities at the same time. When the staffer flagged it to management, they were told bluntly, "Drop it now." But it was too late. The needle had pierced the balloon. The confidence inside the leadership, the arrogance that made them believe they could hide the truth forever, began to crack. People started talking. Quietly, carefully, in parking lots, in locked bathrooms, in hushed conversations at after-hours bars. And almost every conversation included the same haunting question: what is Charlie going to say when he finds out? But Charlie wasn't going to find out, because they had made sure of that. The male member, now essentially functioning as Mikey's shadow partner, had convinced the inner circle to screen Charlie's messages, filter what reached him, and intercept anything that hinted at scandal. If someone tried to warn Charlie, the message never reached him. If someone asked him about the affair, he was blindsided. If someone sent documents, they were rerouted. Charlie wasn't just kept in the dark, he was intentionally misled. The turning point came during a high-stakes strategy retreat in Arizona. Charlie arrived expecting to review data, discuss upcoming initiatives, and establish direction for the next quarter. But the retreat had a different purpose, one he didn't know about: to consolidate control around Mikey. Insiders later described the retreat as unnervingly tense. Whenever Charlie spoke, people exchanged glances. Whenever Mikey spoke, people nodded, smiled, and took notes. Charlie wasn't the center anymore. Mikey was. And the man he was secretly seeing sat directly behind him, whispering suggestions, correcting him, positioning him strategically just like a handler. The retreat dinner was the moment everything snapped. Charlie noticed a document at the end of the table, a policy outline supposedly authored by him. Except he had never seen it before. He didn't write it. He didn't approve it. He didn't even know it existed. When he confronted Mikey about it, Mikey laughed it off. "It's just a draft, nothing official, relax." But one donor, someone old enough, powerful enough, and bold enough, noticed something else. The male member's name was embedded in the metadata as the co-author. Charlie's demeanor shifted instantly. He wasn't angry. He wasn't confused. He was hurt, because this wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal dressed as strategy. That night, Charlie confided in a close friend over the phone. "I think they're making decisions without me. I feel like I'm being handled instead of listened to." That friend would later become Whistleblower #2. But the biggest fracture came when an internal email chain referencing the arrangement leaked to multiple staffers. The email didn't mention the affair directly, but it referenced protecting MM's discretion, avoidance of compromising optics, reinforcing unified messaging before CK is briefed. TK. Charlie Kirk. The implication was unmistakable. There was a story they were all maintaining, a version of events they were all committed to, a coordinated lie being shielded from Charlie. The internal pressure reached a breaking point when a staff member, someone young, loyal, and deeply troubled by what they were witnessing, visited Charlie in person. They tried to warn him subtly. "There are things happening behind the scenes you're not being told." Charlie leaned forward, worried. "What things?" The staffer hesitated, not because they didn't want to tell him, but because their phone kept buzzing. 3 messages. 5. 7. All from unknown numbers. "Stop. Don't speak. Walk away." Someone was watching. Someone knew they were with Charlie. Someone intercepted the meeting. The staffer left abruptly, terrified. Charlie never learned what they wanted to tell him, but that moment awakened something inside him. A suspicion, a fear, a question he had avoided for months. Who was actually in control here? The answer arrived faster than anyone expected. The tipping point came during a late-night internal Zoom call. A glitch occurred just a fraction of a second, but it changed everything. The male member, Mikey's affair partner, forgot to mute himself. While leadership discussed a new initiative, he whispered into his mic, "Make sure he signs it. He doesn't need to understand it." Charlie froze. Everyone froze. The call went silent. Someone tried to cover it. Bad connection. Ignore that. But Charlie wasn't stupid. He knew that voice. He recognized the tone. He felt the manipulation behind every forbidden whisper. He ended the call immediately. 1 hour later, he confronted Mikey in person. Witnesses described the confrontation as the most tense exchange they had ever seen inside TPUSA. Charlie demanded answers. Mikey was evasive. Charlie pressed harder. Mikey grew defensive. Charlie asked the question he had been dreading. "Are you lying to me?" And Mikey answered with the worst possible response. A smirk. Not a denial. Not an explanation. A smirk. And then he said, "You don't need to know everything, Charlie. It's better this way. Better this way." Those words were the match that lit the explosion, because at that moment, Charlie realized something he had feared for months. He wasn't leading TPUSA anymore. He was being managed, handled, filtered, controlled. And the person helping Mikey do it wasn't just a strategist or advisor, it was the man he was secretly seeing. But the first shocking twist didn't appear until Whistleblower #3 leaked a file that stunned everyone inside the movement. A video, recorded secretly. In a side room at the Arizona retreat, the video showed Mikey and the male member in a heated, whispered argument. But the transcript of that argument contained the twist that changed everything. Male member: "If Charlie finds out, we're done. The whole operation collapses." Mikey: "He won't. They won't let him." Male member: "He's starting to question you." Mikey: "Then redirect him. That's what they're there for." They. Not he. Not she. They. Plural. Multiple people involved. Multiple people lying. Multiple people protecting the affair. Because the affair was tied to something much bigger. What was that something? The twist was in the last line of the video. Male member: "If this leaks, it won't just expose us. It will expose why they needed us together." Why they needed us together. That single sentence detonated the political world. Because it wasn't just a forbidden romance. It was a coordinated strategy, a manipulation network, a control system built around the affair. And Charlie was never supposed to know. The secret video leak should have been the peak, the revelation that Mikey and the male member weren't just involved in an affair, but part of a coordinated internal operation designed to manage what Charlie saw, heard, approved, and believed. But what came next shattered even the most seasoned operatives inside TPUSA, because once that recording surfaced, whistleblowers who had stayed silent for months finally stepped forward. Not one, not two, but 4 additional insiders, all with pieces of a puzzle nobody realized existed. And the picture they painted wasn't just disturbing, it was terrifying. The affair wasn't a scandal, it was a recruitment mechanism, a way to ensure loyalty, a way to bind Mikey emotionally to someone who could control him, a way to weaponize intimacy. According to Whistleblower #4, someone who once worked inside the coordination team chat, Mikey wasn't chosen because he was talented or charismatic. He was chosen because he was vulnerable. He needed validation, the whistleblower said. He needed belonging. He needed someone to make him feel like he mattered. They used that against him. They, again, plural, a group, a faction. And this time, insiders named them. They were known internally as the steering layer, a collection of mid-level operatives, media strategists, and donor liaisons who quietly shaped TPUSA messaging while Charlie remained the public face. But the steering layer had one fatal flaw. Charlie didn't always agree with them. Charlie wasn't easy to manipulate. Charlie asked questions. Charlie wanted transparency, so they built a workaround. They created a pipeline of influence that bypassed Charlie entirely, and Mikey became the centerpiece of that pipeline. The male member, the one Mikey was secretly seeing, was already woven into the steering layer. He had access to their strategy documents, their narrative drafts, their talking points, their projections. All he needed was someone on the inside who could bend internal operations to their will. And that someone became Mikey. Their relationship wasn't accidental. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a random workplace affair. It was engineered. A coordinated psychological softening. Praise, attention, flattery, followed by emotional dependency, followed by romantic entanglement. A perfect formula. And once Mikey was hooked, they used him as an internal lever. He redirected staff loyalty. He softened dissenters. He manipulated scheduling. He rewrote talking points. He intercepted communications headed toward Charlie, all while believing he was acting independently. But the male member was reporting everything to the steering layer. Every meeting Mikey attended, every hesitation Charlie expressed, every breakdown in loyalty, every person who questioned the internal power shift, Mikey had no idea he was being used. Not until the first crack appeared. The crack started with a coded message the male member received one night during a high-level donor dinner. Mikey saw the message. It read, Phase 2. Redirect CK's public positioning. To K. Charlie Kirk. Mikey asked what it meant. The male member brushed it off. But Mikey wasn't stupid. He felt the distance. He sensed something shifting. For the first time, Mikey realized. He wasn't the one manipulating Charlie. He was the one being manipulated. But by then, it was too late, because Phase 2 had already begun. Whistleblower #5, someone deeply embedded in donor strategy, revealed a memo labeled Post-CK Positioning Framework. It outlined a restructuring of TPUSA messaging that did not involve Charlie as the final voice. Instead, it referenced emerging leaders aligned with revised institutional goals. And Mikey's name appeared twice in margins, as if someone was testing his placement. The male partner's name appeared 3 times, underlined. It became clear. The steering layer wasn't trying to protect Charlie. They were preparing to replace him, but they couldn't replace him unless his influence weakened, unless his authority diminished, unless staff began viewing him as out of touch, which explained everything. The withheld emails, the accidental schedule conflicts, the altered documents, the redirection of messaging, the unsanctioned drafts, the secret corrections to his public statements. They weren't mistakes. They were sabotage. The affair wasn't the scandal. The affair was the leash. And now Mikey realized he was the one being walked. The real twist came when Whistleblower #6, someone with access to building security logs, revealed restricted entry records from the headquarters, late-night entries, unauthorized room access, deleted footage. One entry stood out. 2:14 a.m. 2 users. 1 badge reading MM. 1 badge belonging to the male member. They entered a restricted strategy room, the same room where only high-level donors, board members, and senior leadership stored confidential documents. The record showed they remained inside for 27 minutes. But the footage for that entry? Gone. Not missing. Deleted. And only one team inside TPUSA had the authority to delete footage. The steering layer. Now, Mikey understood. The male member wasn't slipping away because of emotional conflict. He was slipping away because he had gotten what he needed. The steering layer was nearly done with him. And the moment Mikey realized he was expendable, panic consumed him. That panic triggered a confrontation. In a meeting room no one else was supposed to enter. Mikey confronted his affair partner directly. The whistleblower who leaked the audio described it like watching someone's world collapse. Mikey asked, "Were you using me?" Silence. Mikey repeated, "Did any of this mean anything?" More silence. Then the male member answered, "You were a tool. Don't make this emotional." That line, the coldest line of the entire leak collection, was enough to break Mikey entirely. "You lied to me," Mikey whispered. "No," the male member replied. "I guided you. Guided. Controlled. Used." And then he said the line that revealed the second major twist. "We needed someone close to Charlie to push him out without him realizing it. Push him out. Not support him. Not advise him. Not strengthen him. Push him out." The steering layer wasn't managing a scandal. They were building a coup. And the male member added, with chilling calm, "You weren't chosen because you're loyal. You were chosen because you're predictable. Predictable, meaning they knew Mikey would break rules for love, meaning they knew he would protect the affair, meaning they knew he would lie even to Charlie because he feared losing the relationship. But the final twist was still coming. The male member leaned forward and whispered something the audio barely captured. "It's not just me. There's someone above me. Someone Charlie never suspected. Someone who signed off on this entire operation. Someone above him. Someone even higher in the hierarchy. Someone powerful enough to risk everything. Someone the steering layer obeyed." The audio ended with Mikey whispering, "Oh my God. Charlie trusts them." And the male member responding, "Exactly." The entire scandal shifted. The affair wasn't the core. The cover-up wasn't the core. The steering layer wasn't the core. The core was the unnamed figure. Someone so powerful, so trusted, so deeply embedded that Charlie never once questioned their loyalty. Yet they helped build the plan to quietly push him aside. When the second major twist leaked, revealing that Mikey's affair wasn't just personal but weaponized by a covert faction inside TPUSA, the political universe didn't just react, it imploded. Everything people thought they understood about internal power, loyalty, and Charlie's leadership collapsed overnight. The scandal no longer felt like gossip or workplace dysfunction. It felt like a coordinated overthrow, an operation so intricate, so psychologically engineered, and so well hidden that even those closest to Charlie never saw it coming. The steering layer became a phrase every commentator repeated with wide eyes and shaky voices. People online were terrified by the implications. So TPUSA had a shadow leadership? How did they manipulate Charlie this deeply? Who was the person above the male member? What was the endgame? Screenshots of the affair became secondary. The betrayal became secondary. The romance became a footnote. The world now cared about one thing. What operation was big enough to justify hiding this from Charlie? Political YouTubers were going live for 8-hour marathon streams trying to break down timelines, relationships, and organizational structures. Analysts drew diagrams mapping the steering layer like an underground criminal syndicate. Even mainstream networks normally slow to touch TPUSA, drama jumped into the frenzy. One network anchor delivered a segment titled, "Coordinated Control, the Secret Faction Inside TPUSA." Another said, "This is not about a scandal. This is about the internal sabotage of a national political figure." And then came the most bone-chilling reaction of all. Former TPUSA employees. Some were crying during live streams. Some were furious. Some were shaking with guilt. One said, "I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined the affair was part of a strategic manipulation network." Another said, "We weren't protecting Mikey. We were protecting the people behind Mikey." But the reaction that grabbed the internet's throat was from a former executive assistant, someone who worked directly under leadership for years. She tweeted, "You don't understand, they controlled everything Charlie saw," in all caps, shaking emojis, a terrified tone. She followed it with another. "It wasn't just about information. They controlled who he trusted, who he doubted, who he leaned on, who he pushed away." She ended with the line that went viral across every platform. "They didn't just lie to Charlie, they reprogrammed him." That sentence set the internet on fire. Because if the steering layer reprogrammed Charlie's perceptions, that meant they manipulated his decisions, his leadership, his messaging, his alliances, his entire public identity. When political scientists began discussing the psychological techniques involved, emotional triangulation, social isolation, message filtration, manufactured dependency, the scandal reached a new height. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just manipulation. This was psychological engineering. But the meltdown intensified when donors began speaking out. Big donors, old donors, people with decades of influence and millions invested. One longtime donor said, "I met with Charlie 5 times last year. 4 of those times, Mikey interrupted or redirected the conversation. Now it makes sense." Another said, "I never got to talk to Charlie alone. Someone always hovered." A third, "I asked Charlie about a decision he supposedly approved. He looked confused. He had no idea what I was talking about." These testimonies sent shockwaves because they confirmed what whistleblowers had been trying to warn the world about. Charlie wasn't incompetent. Charlie wasn't distracted. Charlie wasn't slipping. Charlie was blocked, intercepted, managed, surrounded by handlers. And the meltdown reached a peak when an investigative reporter published this chilling headline. Affair was the distraction. TPUSA coup. Attempt revealed in internal documents. The article referenced internal files that suggested the steering layer wasn't just undermining Charlie, they were preparing to phase him out. An internal timeline titled Projected Leadership Shift Q3 proposal included phrases like strategic redirection away from CK, transitional messaging architecture, gatekeeping applied to CK communications, evaluate successor options, and buried halfway down the page, pipeline expansion, Mikey McCoy. The male member's initials appeared repeatedly too, but the most horrifying line in the entire document wasn't about Mikey, or the steering layer, or even Charlie. It said, final approval granted by redacted. The world stopped. Final approval? Granted by who? Who had the authority to approve a plan that involved sidelining TPUSA's founder? Every reporter, every commentator, every YouTuber speculated over the same chilling question. Who was above the steering layer? Who ran the entire operation? People suspected board members, donors, political consultants, outside operatives, or media strategists. But then came the twist that sent the scandal spiraling beyond anything imaginable. A former steering layer member anonymously posted, "It wasn't a board decision, it wasn't a donor, and it wasn't someone external." Cryptic, terrifying, ambiguous. They followed it with, "The person above us attended nearly every internal event for years. Charlie trusted them completely." And then, they manipulated Charlie long before Mikey entered the picture. The internet went silent. Tens of thousands of comments poured in asking the same thing. Who? But the anonymous member refused to reveal the name. Instead, they left one final message. Look at the people Charlie never questioned. Instant meltdown. Because for the first time, people realized this wasn't a scandal contained within an affair. This was a structural takeover years in the making, using emotional leverage, psychological manipulation, and a hidden architect Charlie believed was on his side. And the male member's final leaked line now made horrifying sense. There's someone above me, someone Charlie trusted, but the world doesn't know who. Not yet. As the public meltdown intensified, as donors demanded answers, as whistleblowers emerged one after another, there remained only one question so explosive that nobody dared speak it out loud. Who was the architect above the steering layer? Who had the authority, leverage, fearlessness, and proximity to Charlie to approve a covert internal takeover? Who could greenlight psychological manipulation, strategic redirection, data interception, and influence-based isolation, all without raising suspicions? The steering layer insider's chilling message, "Look at the people Charlie never questioned," echoed across every political forum, YouTube breakdown, Reddit thread, and late-night news segment. Everyone made lists. Everyone speculated. Everyone analyzed old footage, photos, meeting logs, event seating charts. But the answer remained invisible until one more whistleblower stepped forward. This one wasn't a strategist, not a donor, not a staffer, not a disgruntled insider. It was someone the steering layer never expected to talk. Charlie's former driver. A man who spent more hours with Charlie than most executives. Someone who heard private phone calls, witnessed candid moments, and saw things no one else noticed. Because nobody pays attention to the driver. His message to journalists contained just 3 words. It wasn't Mikey. The journalist replied, "We know." The driver wrote again. It wasn't the male member either. The journalist responded, "We know there's someone above them." Who? The driver's final message revealed the first crack in the mystery. Charlie trusted this person more than anyone in the organization. And then, they rode in the SUV with us more than anyone else. That sentence detonated through the investigative community. Because now investigators weren't looking at board members or donors or strategists. They were looking at someone physically present with Charlie. Someone always near him. Someone deeply embedded in his day-to-day life. Investigators began cross-referencing vehicle logs, travel schedules, ground transport manifests, Several names appeared. Most were irrelevant. But one name appeared constantly. A senior TPUSA figure. Someone never seen as threatening. Someone always described as helpful, reliable, and protective. Someone who managed Charlie's logistics, controlled his schedule, filtered his communication, all while projecting devotion. And then came the breakthrough. Whistleblower #7 leaked a small segment of Charlie's private message, draft the one he wrote before he died. The one that was never sent. It said, "I finally understand why the people closest to me feel so distant. Someone has been placing themselves between me and everyone else. Everyone between, placing themselves between him and his staff, his donors, his audience, his own instincts." Charlie continued, "They're always in the room, always in the car, always steps ahead. I thought it was loyalty, but now I know it's control." This was not about Mikey. This was not about the steering layer. This was about someone higher. Charlie's final paragraph exploded the entire narrative. If anything happens to me, don't look at the scandal. Look at the person who made sure every message reached me through them first. That is the person who watched me. The internet froze, because now it made horrifying sense. The steering layer didn't need Charlie to trust Mikey. They needed Charlie to trust this one person, a central conduit, a gatekeeper, a handler. And this person was in the room at the secret dinner, listening, watching, panicking silently. Multiple attendees reported that one man left through a side exit just as the confrontation escalated. The same man Charlie mentioned indirectly. The same man the driver referenced. But then came the twist that solidified the suspicion. A new leak surfaced. A security system log Charlie never saw. It showed multiple access attempts, remote and physical, to his private office, his phone backups, and his cloud account. Each access attempt was traced back to the same internal ID badge. Not Mikey's, not the male members, not the steering layers. His, the unnamed architect. The man Charlie trusted. The man who stood beside him for years. But the most chilling leak came last. A fragment from the final, still unreleased recording the one Usha holds. In it, Charlie said, "I should have seen it. He was with me everywhere. He always said he was protecting me. But he wasn't protecting me. He was protecting the plan." A beat of silence. And then, if this message is heard, he will know I finally saw through him. The leak ends right before Charlie says the name, right before the reveal, right before the truth that will shatter everything. And according to multiple insiders, Usha has already decided to release the full recording. She is waiting for one more confirmation, one more piece of evidence, one final verification of what Charlie feared most. Sources say the reveal will shake the conservative movement to its core, because the man Charlie named was someone almost nobody suspected. Until now. Stay tuned. The name is coming. And now the world stands here on the edge of a revelation so explosive it could rewrite the entire power structure of TPUSA. Not because of an affair, not because of a cover-up, not because of whispers, deleted footage, or secret chats, but because of a name Charlie spoke in his final recording, a name he feared, a name he recognized only when it was too late, a name he wanted revealed if anything happened to him. And that name belongs to the man who stood closest to him, the man nobody questioned, the man who controlled the gate, the man who shaped Charlie's reality without ever raising suspicion, the man who walked out of that secret dinner the moment Usha confronted Erica, the man who disappeared the next morning without a statement. Some people think they've figured it out. Others refuse to believe it could be true. But one thing is certain. When Usha releases the full recording, this movement will never be the same again. So now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments. Do you think the name should be released now? Should the public know who Charlie feared? Do you believe this goes deeper than TPUSA? And do you think the steering layer acted alone? Or were outside forces pushing this operation from the shadows? Your theories aren't just opinions, they are pressure. Pressure that forces the truth to the surface. Pressure that makes silence impossible. Pressure that ensures Charlie's final message is not buried like everything else they hid from him. Before you scroll, make sure you like this video so the algorithm can't bury the truth. Subscribe so you don't miss the second the full recording is released. Turn on notifications because insiders are whispering that the name could drop within days. Share this video with anyone who followed Charlie, TPUSA, or this unfolding power struggle. We are closer to the truth than ever. Closer to confirming the man Charlie believed was watching him. Closer to exposing the architect behind the steering layer. Closer to understanding the real operation hidden behind Mikey's scandal. Stay alert. Stay locked in. Stay ready. Because the next leak won't just answer questions. It will ignite the biggest political firestorm this movement has ever seen.